What's going on, guys? This is Rob. Let's talk about Ms. Marvel Episode 1. We will do an Easter eggs video. Honestly, we're going to do a lot of Easter eggs videos this week because we got the Black Adam trailer that comes out, and then there's the Obi-Wan Kenobi episode that we have to talk about. Then we have to talk about last week's episode because I was in New York at the time. We got a lot of stuff we got to talk about. So there will be a video on the Easter eggs and everything that comes out later, but let's just talk about the first episode here, right? Initial thoughts, whatever you want to call it. So this first episode was amazing. Absolutely loved it. One of the things that I will say right off the bat, the powers of Kamala Khan. I'm glad they didn't make her an Inhuman. One, because the Inhumans suck. And two, because it's a great deviation, right? It's a great way to kind of break away. I know a lot of people are going to kind of be like, well, her powers need to be able to stretch and her identity, all that kind of stuff. I never looked at it that way, right? I never looked at like the powers of Ms. Marvel somehow being tied directly into like her identity and all that kind of stuff. Instead, the story told, or at least the comics by G. Willow Wilson, told two separate stories. The first one was like the story of her life as a superhero. The second part of the story, probably the more significant story, if you're looking for character development, is her struggle as a Pakistani American living in New Jersey, dealing with like super traditional parents and like trying to be what is by all standards of measurement, a modern American girl, right? So like trying to find some sort of normalcy, right? Some normal between those two different lifestyles. So I don't mind that they changed their powers, right? It was never a huge deal to me, never got pissed off about it. I was like, I mean, it's whatever, right? I mean, it's cool. Plus, if they did give her the ability to stretch, people who don't know anything about comic books would be like, so is she related to like Reed Richards? Is she like the daughter of Reed or something like that? It'd probably confuse people a little bit or something along those lines. So having said that, I do love the whole ambiance and the feel of this show because there's so many things they just nailed from the comic books. So many things they nailed that I absolutely loved. So first things first, the family dynamic. That was always the one of the more interesting points when it came to Ms. Marvel, right? Like literally, as we just said, this idea that her parents are super traditional, her mom is really a dick most of the time. She's always like, I know you want to go and have fun, but no, you can't do that, right? You have to do things that are unfun because I'm your mom and I told you to, and I can't adapt to the modern era. So the result of this is that you have this whole kind of dichotomy where she's trying to fit in, she's trying to find her place in the world, and not really sure where she fits in. And in a lot of ways in the comics, she doesn't fit in. I mean, she's got Nakia, she's got Bruno, I think it's Nakia is how you pronounce the name, but she's got both of her friends, but quite literally, they nailed it perfectly, right? Like, what is high school if not a whole bunch of socially awkward teenagers walking around pretending like they have it figured out, right? So it's a really, really cool concept. Absolutely loved the way they handled that. Again, the family dynamic was great. And I love that they kind of tugged at the heartstrings, right? I thought it was adorable when like her mom was like, no, you can't go to Avengers Con or whatever it is. And then ultimately, because her brother kind of talks to the parents, they kind of change their mind. And like her dad comes busting in like an Incredible Hulk outfit. I was like, I mean, if that were me, I would have been like, yeah, man, let's go do that. That sounds amazing. Of course, Kamala, and one of the cool things about her character is she oftentimes just screws up. I mean, she's a teenager, right? Like, what is she if not a person that just makes mistakes all the time, right? It's literally what teenagers do, right? It's a learning thing. And so I loved that whole thing where she just kind of really just crushed her dad. I don't love that she crushed her dad, but I love the idea that, like, she is a teenager doing teenage things and screwing up the way that a teenager does. One of the things that I didn't want to see in this is that she's like the teenager who's trying to figure it out, yet somehow makes all the right choices. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to see that. It's not realistic. It's not relatable in any real way. I loved how they did it there. One of the things that I actually liked the way they handled it, just because of the fact that we wouldn't really get the comic book carryover that we're used to, is the potential romantic interest of Kamala Khan. In the comics, Kamala Khan has a crush on a couple different people. Well, romantic interest in a couple different people. First one is Sam Alexander, who's amazing. The second one is Miles Morales, neither of which exists in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as it stands right now. Miles Morales may appear somewhere along the line because of the events of Into the Spider-Verse. There may be some crossover. We don't really know yet. We won't know until it happens or is confirmed by Feige or somebody like that. And Sam Alexander, we haven't seen hide nor hair of him, right? So obviously we're not going to get that. The idea of Bruno and Kamala Khan, honestly, I always kind of felt like they should be like a romantic couple, at least initially, like that should have happened pretty fast, but it also made sense that they were just really, really good friends. And so again, it could sort of go either way. Regardless of the situation, I'm not too upset about the way it's happening. I actually really, really like it. The next thing is, again, one of the things that I love the most about this is it really is a teenager show. Looking at this show, you can tell the target audience is largely younger girls, right? It's largely girls in high school, things like that, who are looking for a bit of relatability in the Marvel Cinematic Universe where they can't normally find it. No problem with that. For me, I love reading about teenagers in comic books. And the reason for that is because if you go and you read like a Captain America story, Captain America's cool, right? He's interesting, he does some cool stuff, but for the most part, he's usually super serious, right? He's not really the comedic type. Thor is kind of sometimes. Tony Stark's just a dick, right? I mean, you don't really get a whole lot of like comedic tones insofar as like it's fun, goofy, that kind of thing. And the teenage stories, while it's not necessarily goofy, Marvel does a really, really good job of capturing the coming of age element, right? Where you literally have a team called the Champions, for example. So you've got Kamala Khan, you've got Sam Alexander, you've got Miles Morales, you've got Viv, the daughter of Vision, and you got a couple others, one or two others. I can't remember who the other ones are, but you have a teenage group of superheroes operating as a team. And so they're falling in love, out of love. There's love triangles going on. There's, well, I really like him, but I also really like him, and I don't know which one I like more, and all that kind of stuff. And as an adult, you look at that, and it is kind of silly, but at the same time, it's just kind of the youthful vibrance that goes into it, right? The youthful idea of just kids out there having fun being superheroes. And that, I think, really was captured incredibly well in this. And I'm excited to see where they go, because literally at the end of the episode, her mom is, of course, chastising her for going out and having a good time. I would have done the same thing if her mom was like, why did you sneak out? It's like, because all you ever do is say no. Right? So I figured I might as well just assume you said yes and just go do it, right? Just go have some fun. I'll pay the price. Easier to seek forgiveness than permission. So the result of that is, of course, you saw her out there having a great time. And of course, when she got back and her mom asked her, you know, do you want to be some girl who's good like we raised you to be, who's probably going to grow up to be boring as hell? Or do you want to be like some cosmic girl with her head in the clouds? And she's like, I want to be cosmic. Right? I love that element. And I'm hoping that kind of continues on. When her and Bruno are like making the plan and all that kind of stuff, you know it's not going to work, right? None of it's going to go according to plan, even though it would have been awesome to pull like some Starsky and Hutch stuff and just like ride a bicycle off a bridge onto a bus. That would have been amazing. But you knew none of that was going to happen. But I loved all those different elements that all just kind of came together and combined together into this. Now, there are some other great little Easter eggs, some of which I'll talk, we'll talk about here. We'll reiterate in our Easter eggs video. But one of the things that I really, really loved is that they gave us an explanation as to how it is everybody knows about Avengers Endgame, because it's the question that we never got an answer to. We never got an answer to the question, how does the world know about Avengers Endgame? The world knows that Tony Stark died, but we don't know how they know he died. We don't know how they know about Thanos and the Infinity Stones and all that kind of stuff. You know, we didn't know if it was one of those things where like everything ended and then like the Avengers just went on TV and held a press conference, right? We didn't know what went on. Come to find out, Scott Lang's got a podcast, which I would really love to see. Not gonna lie, I would love a Paul Rudd Scott Lang podcast where he's like interviewing other members of the cast of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they're all basically in character. I would love that, right? It would be absolutely amazing. And it doesn't even have to be like an ongoing thing. Make it like a 10-episode miniseries, right? Just a mini podcast, right? That's it, right? You know, it's 10 episodes, each one's an hour long. When you're done, you're done. And that's it. That's all we get. It'd just be a great little thing. Honestly, I think people would eat it up, to be honest with you. I think it'd be one of the most viral podcasts that's out there. But literally, Scott Lang, like doing interviews and talking to people, that's basically how the world found out about the events of Avengers Endgame. And I think it's a cool thing, because a podcast sounds exactly like something like Scott Lang would do, right? Like, now, I would hope that he would have what's-his-name along for the ride, where he could basically give us like a synopsis. Was it Luis? Was that the guy? The guy that everybody wants to basically open for like Deadpool 3, to basically give us the synopsis of like how Deadpool ended up in the Fox universe to the current universe? That guy? I mean, I would hope he'd be there. But regardless, right? I love that they gave us that little Easter egg. And there were a bunch of them too, right? There were a bunch of other ones that went into it. For example, when you go through and you have like all those different depictions of Kamala Khan when she's talking about like Miss Marvel Carol Danvers, some of them are like her old school version, right? From like way back in the 70s when she first appeared. Some of them are actually when Moonstar became, took the Miss Marvel moniker for a while. That was actually the outfit that Zoe was wearing. So again, like cool little Easter eggs and little tidbits that go into it. Definitely dug all that. And I would say above all else, the thing that's the most important here, and the thing that I loved the most about all this, is the fact that they captured the very nature of Kamala Khan, which is she's a fangirl. She's literally a girl who just loves superheroes, absolutely loves superheroes, and she loves Carol Danvers more than anybody else. Now, as soon as they opened up with that and they confirmed that was going to happen, she's just like praising, she's right, like the sun rises and sets on Carol Danvers as far as Miss Marvel is concerned, right? Won't hear a word against her. As soon as they opened that up, I was like, oh, dude, man, like people who hate Carol Danvers, they're going to be pissed, right? I don't know. A part of me was just kind of like, hey, everybody who hates Carol Danvers, eat it. Like, I absolutely loved that. I thought it was funny. So it's going to be nice to see them just kind of sitting, stewing, being pissed off. I can't wait to read their angry tweets. But the thing about this is I love that because that's a central point of her character, right? In the first story arc, one of the things to know, in the first story arc of G. Willow Wilson's run on Miss Marvel, when she was initially exposed to the Terrigen Mist, because Marvel stupidly thought it was an idea to make her into an Inhuman, which sucked because the Inhuman sucked. But when that whole story arc basically completed, right, when she got her powers and all that kind of stuff, she basically ends up meeting Carol Danvers. And Carol Danvers essentially kind of gives her blessing and says, like, go forward and do your thing, right? Like, go be a superhero. Just understand you're stepping into a pretty significant role here. And what you're doing is no small thing. So when you go out there in the world and you act as a superhero, you reflect all of us. So if you start screwing up, we're going to bring the hammer down, right? It was a cool thing. She got to literally meet her idol. So again, I love the first episode. I really, really enjoyed the first episode. Of course, again, kind of circling back to her powers for a bit, and I think this is something worth discussing here. The nature of her powers really seems to be strongly tied to the idea of like the 10 rings, right? Like the whole idea of the Mandarin and all that kind of stuff, because the way her energy emanates looks almost exactly the way the energy emanates from the 10 rings. Now, I don't know if anybody at Marvel has come out and explicitly said, no, the two powers are not linked. They have nothing to do with each other. I'm not entirely sure. I have no real idea. I know another popular theory, and really the way her powers emanated as well, right? The way they manifested looks a lot like Eternal technology. So that's entirely possible as well, right? We know Phastos was like the weapons guy, right? He was the one that like built arms and armament, different things like that. It's not that far beyond the realm of imagination to believe that when you basically had the warring societies that started destroying each other and led to the Eternals essentially staying hands off, that some of their technology just kind of got left behind, right? Was basically sort of stuck around there, and that, so, you know, it made its way from one person to the next, and that was really it, right? I mean, the idea of them sharing their technology with humanity, even if only on a limited scale, that was kind of a main focal point of the Eternals. Granted, we don't know the full extent of the powers of Kamala Khan, but given the way in which her powers manifested, I still stick by the idea this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe's version of either the quantum bands or the nega bands, or the two of them tied together. I still say that's most likely what this is going to be. I don't know if we're really going to see like a Quasar, Wendell Vaughn, or Phyla-Vell, or Genis-Vell, or any of those guys. We may not. I think this is kind of what we get in terms of the nega bands, quantum bands, that sort of thing. But we won't really know, right? I mean, all we really know right now, and we'll probably find, I mean, we will find out by the end of the show, but within the next couple episodes, I think we'll get a better understanding, especially because of the mid-credit scene that we got, which was Damage Control, basically saying, okay, grab that girl and bring her in, and let's find out what's going on here, right? So again, I'm really excited about the show. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was phenomenal, a great episode. So yeah, I'm definitely going to stick with it. Really hyped about it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Thank you all for watching. I will catch you all later. Peace.